Greetings, fellow painters! Today we're exploring the use of a flat blue acrylic paint when painting a red cape. We're going to mix the blue acrylic paint in with our red midtone color to create the foundation for layering up a red cape. The idea here is that mixing the blue in with the red will create the purple we want for our deepest shadow color. Purple is widely regarded as a fine shadow color for reds, and by incorporating the red midtone color of the cape within the shadow area, it should look more natural as we layer up to the brighter reds found in the highlights. However, we will have to overcome one obstacle when attempting this approach with our usual miniature-specific paints. Welcome to Trehane Miniatures. When artists mix their own colors, they are typically using pure pigment paints, which our miniature paints definitely are not. For example, if you mix alizarin crimson oil paint with phthalo blue oil paint, you would get a very deep, rich purple color. You could then add white to this purple to increase the value or lightness of the purple, resulting in a nice lavender color. You could then add other colored pigments which will shift the hue or color of the purple. For example, adding cadmium yellow to the purple would move the hue into the brown range. All of these colors look quite pleasing when created with pure pigment paints. Finally, adding grays will decrease the saturation or intensity of the color. The challenge that we face as miniature painters is that most of us simply begin our paint collection with some sort of starter set that is miniature specific and then add more miniature specific paints as needed. And only as needed. Lord, I have a problem. These paints are all pre-mixed to achieve the desired color and effect. This means that the paints have other colors added to shift the hues, which isn't really a big deal to us, but acrylic paints designed for miniature painting often have grays added to them to increase the opacity of the translucent acrylic medium. This results in a subtly desaturated color, with the payoff being that it has better coverage. What this means for us is that when we decide to combine two pre-mixed, slightly desaturated colors, it tends to compound the desaturated look. The result we end up with is a noticeably gray version of the color that we had imagined. All this to say that I would not add a blue miniature paint to a red miniature paint and then try to paint a vibrant purple robe. I'd just grab a pre-mixed purple and go for it. But a vibrant purple robe isn't what we're after here. Today we want to create a shadow color for our red cape that incorporates the red color of the cape in the shadow area. As this is the shadow and not supposed to be receiving much light, it's okay that it's somewhat desaturated. And by using our red color in the shadow, it should look very natural and work nicely as we transition up to the bright red parts of the cape that are receiving light. I like bold Pure Roll Red Pro Acryl for the main red color of the cape. I first try adding some Sky Blue Pro Acryl to it to get the purple shadow color. Notice how gray this purple looks. I actually think it looks a little too gray, so I decide to try again. This time, I'm adding flat blue model color to the Pure Roll Red. It's still slightly gray, but I think this purple is a little richer than the previous mix. As I mix this paint, I do have water in my brush to help thin the paint. I'm going to cover the entire cape with this purple, and I want the paint to be a little thin so that it dries somewhat translucent. This will ensure that the deep recesses remain quite dark. I will go over the entire cape except for the darkest shadow areas with a second coat of paint to boost the intensity of the purple. Also, I'm working with two models here. I'm using Scarlet Witch and Doctor Strange from the Marvel Zombies board game because I want to try two slightly different approaches. On the Doctor Strange model, I plan to leave a higher percentage of the darker reds and purple visible than I will on the Scarlet Witch model. This will definitely result in higher contrast, but I'm not quite sure how it's going to affect the overall appearance of the cape reading as pure red. I definitely don't want it to look like a purple cape with red highlights. For the next layer, I will add more Pure Roll Red to what is left of the purple mix. I will not add any more blue to this. This will result in a dark red hue, and I'm applying this to all of the cape except for the deepest recesses. Don't be fooled by how bright this looks going on. It is still going to dry fairly dark. I'm leaving a touch more purple visible on the Doctor Strange cape. Something that I noticed about layering this way, where the midtone Pure Roll Red is being mixed into each layer color, is that I don't really need to go back and do any glazing. The color values just seem to flow naturally from one to the next. Next, I'll use Pure Roll Red and start establishing the highlights. I'm also switching to a size 1 synthetic brush. Up until now, I've been using a size 3 brush to block in all of the basic colors. I'm sticking with a synthetic brush because I'm not going to put in any crazy details at this point, but I am going to start paying more attention to my brush strokes. I'm going to focus on all of the raised surfaces of the cape that would be catching light. I'm going to start to use some stippling and short strokes to lay in a bit of texture, and when feasible, I'll draw my strokes towards the light source, ending each stroke at a point that I want to be the brightest. This isn't overly critical at this point in the highlighting process, but it is good practice. In addition to all of the raised surfaces, I'm also going to edge highlight most of the features of the cape, including the bottom edge. Here you can really see how much shadow color I decided to leave in the folds of Doctor Strange's cape. The final step of the highlighting process is to add ice yellow model color to the Purell red. Now is when every stroke matters. I have switched to a size 1 sable brush for the rest of the highlights. This is what's going to sell the effect that light is bouncing off of the cape. Even when highlighting in a straight line of a single fold in the cape, I'm applying that line highlight with a series of dots or short strokes. We will achieve these highlights in a couple of passes, and we'll add a little more ice yellow with each pass. We have incorporated the mid-tone color Purell red in every layer of this cape, which hopefully achieves a natural progression from the darkest shadow to the lightest highlights. As I wrap up the final look of these capes, I will occasionally use some Purell red thinned way down with water to glaze the edges of highlights or shadows that I feel are too intense. Let me know in the comments if you would like to see the full tutorials for painting these two miniatures. Thank you so much for watching. Please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel to join our growing community of painters.